Welcome back to SaharaTV. My name is Riddled. Our first guest today recently marked his 37th year as a Catholic priest. In the last 3 years, he has been the Bishop of Sokoto Diocese. From that pinnacle, he continues to be one of the most respectable voices of the masses in Nigeria, Bishop Hassan Kukah. Bishop Kukah, welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much, Riddled.
Yeah, let me start by saying congrats on your 37th year as a Catholic priest. Will you be able to tell us what changed in the last 37 years when you were ordained and what is going on within the church today?
Well, thank you very much. As I tend to think in these things, it is actually people that need to be congratulated, not one as an individual, because nothing would have happened in one's life were it not for, family, friends, millions of other Nigerians and men and women of good will. So to them, I really owe a lot of gratitude and appreciation. Well, personally, of course, one is getting older, hopefully wiser. But also, one has watched the growth of the church, and I speak here of the Catholic Church in particular. At the time of my ordination in 1976, I think there are probably less than 30 dioceses in Nigeria. Today, there are 52 dioceses across the country. The population has grown astronomically. The face of Christianity has changed. The face of politics, economic activity, almost every department of our national life has changed. Perhaps not with the kind of speed that we would have expected, at least from the point of view of improving on the quality of the lives of the citizens of Nigeria. And I think that is still a very terrible black spot, that our resources have really still not been able to match the very low quality of vulnerable lifestyle of our people. So for me, those are some of the nagging challenges. But on other levels, I think one looks back with a lot of gratitude and hope.
Now, Bishop, the Pope Francis, said recently that unfettered capitalism is ruining the world. Does something like that worry you when you look at a place like Nigeria?
Sorry, come again. I didn't get the question.
Oh, I said that recently Pope Francis said that unfettered capitalism is ruining the world. Does something like that worry you when you look at Nigeria and the kind of economic system that we run in the country?
Well, whatever pretensions we may have, Nigeria is neither a capitalist nor a socialist country. But most importantly, I don't think that anybody can, as it were, talk about socialism or capitalism or any system for that matter with any sense of purity. In the sense that in 1989, communism collapsed, thus raising a lot of questions about the future of socialism and so on. But whether we like it or not, the questions that socialism tried to ask have still not been answered. There was a bit of triumphalism from the likes of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and others about the feeling that maybe the collapse of capitalism was necessarily a victorious sign for capitalism. It's not the case. So to answer the question, you have to read what the Pope said in proper context. If you take it along with another apostolic exhortation written by Pope Benedict, you will see that the argument is still basically the same. The whole obsession of capitalism with profit and the ideological belief that somehow it is a survival of the fittest takes us to the days of Darwin. And what I say is that a more equitable, just and fair society is possible. And that whatever political or economic systems we espouse, they must locate their relevance within the context of how they improve the quality of life of ordinary citizens, especially the most vulnerable. And I think this has been the most outstanding thing that the Pope Francis has tried to say.
Now, let's look at Nigeria and what's going on in the political scene. There's been a lot of movements, people realigning and joining different parties. Do you think that ultimate goal of all these changes is to strengthen democracy, or is it just aimed at wresting power away from President Jonathan?
Well, I think one of the greatest tragedies that has afflicted Nigeria since the return to democracy has been our inability to really create a political class, that can understand the meaning and the essence of politics. I mean, the entire landscape is riddled with all kinds of characters, some with criminal records, who have just come into politics simply because that's about the only way to earn a living. We really have a very, very serious problem with the possibility of politics being taken over by bandits. Clearly, what you see happening in Nigeria is that because of the huge amount of resources that are available, the political processes are literally nothing short of banditry, with the collective struggle for platforms. And whatever platforms they may be, you can see the dishonesty in the constant shifting of the platforms. I mean, in the last, from 1999 till date, that we returned to democracy, there are people who are contesting for elections and have almost at every election contested on a different platform. It cannot be that you want to be a good football player and you don't, simply because you don't have a shirt in Manchester United, you decide you want to go to Liverpool today, you go to Arsenal tomorrow. I mean, it's just what we have on the ground in Nigeria so far is that people have refused to respect the rules of engagement. Clearly, the whole question of constitutionalism, respect for rule of law, processes, and so on, are totally absent in the minds of the Nigerian politicians. So, and for me, personally, it's a source of great worry because this is not what we bargained for. The sheer display of what I call literally executive rascality, with little relevance to how to improve the lives of ordinary people. This is what is most puzzling. So now you have a lot of people moving in different directions in the country, trying to wrestle power. But this is not power to do good. And we must never be deceived. I mean, none of these guys are going to do anything different from what they are accusing Jonathan of. And for me, these are the critical questions. So the real measure of what people believe or think is to be located in what people are, the level of people's performance. There's no need trying to be a governor if you cannot be a good local government channel. There's no need trying to be a president if you cannot be a good governor. So these are some of the issues. So, and they're worrying to me because, as I said, it is the lives and the future of ordinary Nigerians that are constantly being put at risk.
Now, it's interesting you talked about people who are trying to criticize the president. Recently, we had a letter written by President Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president, very critical of Jonathan. What do you think about that letter and the person that wrote it?
Unfortunately, I have not. You will be surprised to hear this. I think I was probably one of the first people. I mean, I got the letter quite early. But strange enough, I read the first page. I just didn't feel like continuing. Then I read the last 5 or so lines. And since there are no reason to go back to read the letter. So frankly, I've not read, I can't claim I've read the letter. And I have no... Like, I don't know how you play politics. And I think at the level of Obasanjo, people should be more discerning. I think there are different ways that the politicians, as a sign of a show of maturity, should be able to deal with issues of how to change the people and so on. Especially in South Africa. I mean, the system was able to get, let me use the word, get rid of Thabo Mbeki. For whatever may have been the reason, it was flawless in the sense that nobody needed to lose their lives. Margaret Thatcher was removed from politics in Britain, which was at the heart of her arrogance and power. For me, it's really unfortunate if people of the status of Obasanjo will have to resort to the masses of the accusation.
The line is. Can you hear me, Bishop?
About NNPC. A lot of those accusations are beginning to fall apart. So it is, for me, worrying that the PDP, which is a dominant party, does not have the internal mechanism, for conflict resolution. So, like Chosa would say, if gold should rust, what will Iron do? What do they expect ordinary people in Nigeria to do? We are not the ones to if the PDP or the political class believes that Jonathan is not doing a good job, there's nothing they can do to Jonathan except to wait until Jonathan has concluded his 4 years, short of a military coup or whatever else. But beyond that, I mean, if you lose the election, you have to have the discipline, to wait until it is time. I mean, sorry to use the image, but Nigeria won the Africa Cup of Nations. We cannot say that now we have a good team. Please let us have work tomorrow. Let us work in January. There are rules and regulations. So for me, whatever anybody may have to say, I think we need to learn to respect the rules of engagement.
Now, the leadership of the Nigerian Christians appear to be solidly behind President Jonathan. Are church leaders like you happy about the way the president is steering the ship of the nation?
As far as I'm concerned, for me, first of all, I mean, when you use the word the leadership of the Christian community, we have an association. Okay, that is Pastor Orese-Jafo is the current president of CAN.
Yeah.
President Orese-Jafo is the president. I mean, he's a pastor that has a single church. All right, he can definitely not be leader of the Catholic community that has 54 dioceses across the country. So when we talk about leadership of the Christian community, please let's be a little bit clear and more restrained in how we talk about.
Yeah, but when he speaks, people take it that he speaks for the whole Christians or the people who are members of CAN.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. Okay, when the Pope speaks, the Pope is speaking on for the Catholic. I mean, when he speaks as the Pope of the Catholic Church, every Catholic falls in line. The president of CAN, whether he's a Catholic bishop or a pastor or a minister or whatever, he's leading a voluntary association. And not CAN is not a church. So, I mean, I'm just saying that people should be, take everybody for their view. And then I should be free to express my views. And when it comes to issues of politics and, the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference and I, we have a completely different view about maybe which party to vote for. These are civil rights that are available to all of us. So, but issues of religion are completely different, and we must treat them with that kind of respect. So when the president of CAN speaks in his personal capacity because somebody has put a microphone in front of him, he may say he's speaking on behalf of the Christians, but for that to get the kind of traction you're talking about, the Christian community has to sit down together through his leadership and take a particular decision. So when the president of CAN speaks, he may speak on behalf of the Christians, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every Christian will agree with him all the way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And for me, at the end, it really does not matter whether the president is a pastor or a Catholic bishop or an Anglican bishop. That's the point I'm making. But as for Jonathan and what I think of Jonathan, again, for me, this is neither here nor there. Jonathan is today the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he will and should remain president of Nigeria until the expiration of his term. When that term comes, we will all be told whether if Jonathan wants to run for the presidency of Nigeria, is more than welcome. I will assess and decide whether I want to vote for him. And nobody has the right to deny him. That right. It's a constitutional right that is available to every Nigerian. And really, this is the point I'm making, that politicians must learn the art of discipline, to play by the rules, and to wait until the final whistle has been blown. So for me, that is why all this noise that is being made smacks of political immaturity. It also smacks of greed and selfishness that is driving the process, because there's nothing that can happen in Nigeria until it is time for the next election. And there will be a date for that election, which will be given to us by the National Electoral Commission.
Now let's go to something else. Yesterday, the Yoruba cultural group, the Afenifere, they met with the president, and the report that came out was that they told the president that a national conference is more important than 2015 election. Do you subscribe to such an idea, and what do you think about this national conference?
Again, as I said, Nigeria pressure groups should exist in Nigeria, But whatever Afenifere thinks, whatever Afenifere believes, whatever CAN thinks, all these are non-state actors. I mean, they are free to air their views. And how their views feed into policy is a different matter altogether. This is all within the realm of freedom of speech. But to answer your question, first of all, I was secretary of the Political Reform Conference. My personal conviction is that then as now, was that my worry was that this idea was purely and simply a political gimmick. Now, I hear from President Jonathan's body language, his willingness to detach himself from the process. Now, if that were to happen, it will make it a completely different process from what Obasanjo had, what Abacha had. Because what we had, and the tragedy with the Obasanjo thing was that, unknown to the rest of us, despite the hard work that we did, he had his own ambition buried in the process. And once that ambition was not realized, literally the good work went through the window. And that has been the basis of my own, of my own personal anxiety. Plus, I have often argued that it is a pity, because in constituting these bodies, what I suspect may happen is that unless we have a completely different process of choosing delegates and members, the real tragedy with the Nigerian process, beginning from 1976, which when we produced the draft constitution that was subjected to debate in 1978 and 1977 to 1978, which ushered in the Second Republic. The problem is that every time you have this process, it is inundated with politicians. And the politicians use it as a platform not to think about a great Nigeria, but to simply plot and scheme how to form political parties. If you read through, and I've read through the report, if you look at almost all these initiatives, 95% of the members have always ended up as politicians forming different political parties. This is why we are unable to deal with the fine issues of drafting a constitution, because too many men and women of ambition simply use the opportunity to deal with their selfish interests as opposed to what should be good for the nation. So, frankly, my personal candid view is that for this process to succeed, President Jonathan may have to make sure that all the people who participate in the process at the next level should have nothing to do with politics after the process is concluded. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, you are going to end up with with arguments, posturing that will trigger up all kinds of reactions. In 1979, Shagari and others, in 1978, President Shagari and others walked out. The Muslims walked out on grounds of Sharia. They finally came back. At the end of the day, many of them who resolved this issue, after elections were concluded, nobody mentioned Sharia right through until that government was overthrown. So for me, unless you have a situation in which you have a process that insulates the process itself from politics, you're just going to go round and round in circles. The governors will send their boys, the president will send his boys, and at the end of the day, that is what you are going to have. And you will never get a document that will command the respect of everybody, because we'll get trapped debating either Sharia or debating about zones or debating about things that have nothing to do and will not put bread on the table of ordinary Nigerians. Mm.
Now, at an event marking Aki Kenga's 25th anniversary, you said that intellectuals are moderating their speech to avoid being kicked out of the villa when they get there. Now, do you think that the bulk of the leadership problems that we have in Nigeria today is the fault of the intellectuals who do not speak up? Or is it the followership who are not demanding accountability?
Perhaps, if you look at other countries in the world and how other democracies are surviving and so on, it should be clear to you, that it is intellectuals, whether they ideologically are aligned to a political party. The Brookings Institute, for example, in New York, Harvard University, a range of institutions have a way of offering clarity of policy that should guide, policy makers and policy implementers. Unfortunately, in the situation in Nigeria, because the governor believes that he literally is presiding over a distribution agency, because the president believes that he's presiding over a distribution agency, because the local government and the ministers believe that they are presiding over agencies of distribution, they have absolutely no time for thinking through what needs to be done. And this is why the country is littered with hundreds of thousands of uncompleted projects, because people don't think through what needs to be done. One day, the governor wakes up and says he's going to start building a bridge. He starts constructing the bridge before he realizes that, the weather conditions, resources, and so on and so forth cannot enable the project to be concluded. Somebody decides he wants to supply, he wants to give people water because boreholes are somehow the going thing. The governor embarks on a project. The president embarks on a project. No sooner does the project start, and it becomes very clear that very little thinking went into the process. It was more driven by politics than anything else. Governors, president, everybody wants to take a university to his village, irrespective of whether there are roads or no roads. So the point I'm making, and the point I continue to make, is that it is intellectuals that drive how a country is governed. The decision to go to space is not a decision taken by the president. The president of America may take the final decision, but the intellectual infrastructure for that is not something that the PDP or the Conservative Party in Britain or the Republican Party or the Democratic Party can deal with. So the point I was making, and I've continued to make, is the need to insulate, but also to privilege the intellectual, the intellectual as a vital component of democracy. And the point I was making at the Aka Ikenga lecture was to insist that we need to bring a lot of thinking into the process. In Nigeria, everybody likes to talk, and we are always good at talking, but very little thinking goes into the talking that we have in the country. That's why everybody, 170 million Nigerians, have a point of view about everything.
All right.
And you can't govern a country in that way.
Now, along the same line, there are some people in some quarters who often mention your name as a potential candidate for political office. In fact, some of them even suggest that you're a potential candidate to be president of Nigeria. Does that surprise you? And do you have such a thing in mind?
Well, I hear all those things. I've been hearing those kind of stories for the better part of over 20 years. But again, it is the feeling in Nigeria that somehow somebody is going to appear from somewhere and is going to change our country. First of all, I'm not available for politics, even as a local government councillor. In part because I took a decision about what I wanted to be, and I'm struggling very hard to be a good priest. I'm not sure that I've succeeded, but I'm still struggling. Now, if I don't succeed in being a good priest, I doubt that I can succeed in being a good president or a good governor. So, and I believe that, if I were living in a country that really doesn't have educated people and qualified people, then perhaps some of those things might make sense. But in a country like Nigeria with incredibly talented and gifted people, very well motivated people, I think the issues here is to appreciate the fact that we are going to be on this journey for a very long time, and that God has blessed us with a lot of resources, but those resources are constraining our capacity to think and our capacity to become disciplined. But I think we must continue to encourage ourselves, and let us not look for alternative people to resolve our problems, whether it's from the church or from the mosque, or whether it's from the military or from the police. The issue of building a nation is the business of politics and politicians. Tragically, we do not have that quality of people for now. But I think it doesn't foreclose the possibility that we're going to have those kind of people. It's a work in progress, and the best people like us can do is to continue to encourage the political class. So there is no need for anybody to look in my direction. First of all, I'm not available. Secondly, I don't have the resources. Thirdly, I believe that that is not what I was born to do. But I also believe that we should continue to encourage the members of the political class and hope that they can really develop the reflex, to appreciate the fact that they must make politics attractive. The governors, some of the governors, they had a meeting here in Sokoto. They invited me to speak to them. And the point I kept trying to make to them is, look, it is important that you make politics honorable. It is important that married people make marriage attractive, so that younger people can aspire to be married. It is important that footballers behave well, so that younger people can aspire to a career in sports, in football or whatever. So whatever we do, it's important that priests, bishops, we behave well, so that those coming behind us can be inspired.
All right.
So the problem with Nigerian politics is we are not taking on the issue of how do we inspire the next generation. And for me, this is the challenge.
Bishop Kukah, we have 30 seconds left. I can't leave you without asking this question. When you took over as the Bishop of Sokoto, you had about 17 parishes and over 44,000 Catholics in the region. How is it now? I'm asking this question knowing that there have been a lot of activities about Boko Haram up there in the north, and there have been a lot of people who are Christians who used to live in the north that moved down to the south. How is the state of the church in most northern states today? And how do you feel about those who could living and those who could not live, being stuck there?
Well, you know, I'm an extraordinarily lucky person. You know, I'm very lucky because, as I said, I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of people across the divide. So that has been a great asset to me. The Sultan just lives up the road from me. We're supposed to have dinner tonight, but I probably will not be able to make it. And he's somebody, I mean, he's a very warm, very affectionate, very patriotic, also very committed and very obeying, citizen. He has made Islam easier for people to access, and relate with. I'm also hoping that in our own little way, through our own friendship and collaboration, that we can actually show that Islam, Christianity, religion can play and should play a more noble role in our society. Now, it's been wonderful for me in Sokoto here. Just about 3-4 weeks ago, to the greatest surprise of many people, we applied to the government of Zamfara State for permission to build a church. And I told my people right out very clearly, it took us about 4 or 5 weeks for the papers to be processed, and we've been given permission to build our church. In fact, 2 days ago, as part of my anniversary celebration, we laid the foundation for the building of that church in Buzo. We're beginning to expand, but really, for me, the real challenge is largely with the governors and the people who administer land. We need much more brave politicians who can stand with people. We are celebrating Mandela. But, you know, a lot of people who stood up for black people even before Mandela came. And then white missionary priests who stood up for black people, when it was fashionable to do so. So there are a lot of opportunities for us in Nigeria. But for us in northern Nigeria, the grand problem still remains that a lot of politicians don't match their words with action. Their work does not match the talk. And this is one of the issues of politics, that everybody votes for you. People don't vote for you as Christians and Muslims. And for me, the governors in the north must have the honesty, the commitment to take us as citizens of Nigeria. Religion is an accident. You know, if I had been here, I probably would have been a sheikh or an imam in a church. If the Sultan had been going in a meeting, I probably would have been an archbishop, somewhere. So it is really a question of my challenge is how to make my faith attractive as a major source of contribution to the development of the country. And, to end, for the first time in our history, on the 12th of November, the feast of Christ the King, it requires a procession by Christians all over. And so for the first time, next year will be 50 years of the Catholic Church in Sokoto. For the first time, I applied to the police commission. I gave us permission. We walked around 5 streets of Sokoto. It seemed unprecedented, but also for me was a demonstration of the fact that things are not as bad as we think they are. We are lucky that Boko Haram, all the 4 states that make up Sokoto State, Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, and Sokoto, we've had no real incidents of Boko Haram. There's been other aspects of criminality around Zamfara and other places, but they are largely related to cattle, herdsmen, and so on. Nothing to do with religion. So from the point of view of Boko Haram, we're extraordinarily lucky. But my prayer is that the Muslims, that we in Nigeria can rise beyond this whole obsession with Christianity and Islam and talk about a common citizenship and for a common nation. That is my dream and that is my vision.
Okay, Bishop Kukah, thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate you, Bruno. Thank you, and have a wonderful Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. Thank you, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Okay.
God bless you. Thank you.
All right. When we come back, we are going to talk to the CNPP Secretary, Okechukwu. He will be here to talk about the national conference and other things. Stay tuned.